like to call the meeting to order. Regional Wastewater Advisory Committee meeting for January 23rd, 2025. Welcome to the new year, everybody. We'll start with a roll call.
All right. Alan Forrest.
Sure.
Alejandra. Anne Marie.
Here.
Asia.
Here.
Claire.
Here.
Craig. Eric. Raise your hand, Eric.
Here.
Okay, gotcha. Kirsten.
Here.
Matt.
Here.
Scott Oldendorf.
Here.
And Steve Foley.
Here.
Oh, Scott, did I miss you? Scott Colt.
I'm here.
Okay, gotcha. So we have a quorum.
Amazing. Great way to start out the new year. I'm going to do the virtual meeting reminders. Please mute your microphones. This will help ensure there's no feedback or background noises that may interfere with the speaker. If a committee member would like to speak, ask a question, raise your hand, use that feature on your computer, and remember to lower your hand once you're done speaking. When you're ready to speak, please don't forget to unmute your microphone, especially important during votes. And don't forget to mute your microphone when you're finished. As a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. And this meeting is being recorded to satisfy the open meeting law requirements. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Next, we'll have the call to the audience. Do we have any audience members that would like to speak today? No? All right. We will move on to the safety share. Anybody have a safety share they'd like to share with the group?
I do.
No way. Awesome.
I'm glad I finally could come up with one. I just wanted to bring this one up. We focus, significantly on industrial safety because of the industrial operations we have, but we do also talk a lot about driving, which impacts just about everybody in our organization and around. But one of our recent interesting factoids, our goal for 0 recordable injuries, it's something we strive very diligently for, and we've made great headways. We unfortunately, I mentioned it last month, but we had one vehicle accident where 3 new employees were being onboarded and they get some facility tours, and the person that was doing onboarding was driving them, and they were hit by another vehicle. They were not at fault, but 3 of the 4 occupants became recordables because they either got prescriptions issued or physical therapy prescriptions, and whether they filled the prescriptions or did the physical therapy, we don't know. But regardless, just the fact that they did that made them recordables. Well, another one that I heard about just recently is we also do, a long-term evaluation. All of our employees who work in the noisier industrial areas have audiometric hearing tests every year, and how they do year to year to year is tracked. At any rate, this is the first time I can recall in almost 20 years, but we had 4 individuals who actually showed a decrease in hearing functionality. And by definition, that counts as 4 recordable injuries. But, there are some protocols of some retesting and some things that could change that. But as of this moment, having 4 individuals with the hearing drop, whether it's old age, there could be any number of reasons. They could have a cold, who knows? But if in fact it turns to be true, that's 4 more recordable injuries, which, dang it, that's not the wrong direction. But the benefit or the positive side is it points us in a direction that we haven't talked a whole lot about, and that is, we offer all kind of hearing protection, but Are we ensuring that our employees are using it? Are we making sure they're wearing it or using it appropriately or properly? So that's our current campaign. And I just thought, and it's a good one too, not just in the industrial environment, but, people do things at home, run power tools or leaf blowers or loud music, all those things. Alan, you play the loud music, right? So, be careful, with your hearing and stuff. And that's one that it's hard to get back if you lose it. So that's all I got, but thank you.
About a year ago, I started wearing earplugs all the time when I practice music, when I play it.
Yep.
As much as I can when I play.
Good.
But
Good
yeah,
form.
it's pretty critical. Any other safety things that people would like to share? Well, I could share one, which is I got a hybrid car. I got a new car after my many, many years with no cars. And the reason I'm going to mention this is that it has all these safety features that help you stay in the lanes, etc. You don't want to go too fast. And I have to say that the car is a constant reminder to accelerate slowly, to brake slowly, to, be careful of your lane and all that sort of thing. So I don't know. I hadn't had a new car in many, many years. And they teach you a few things. So I recommend it. You're less sloppy in one of those cars. So that's
Good one.
Very good.
fine. All right, anybody else? All right, we'll move on then to the approval of the minutes. Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes for this for last time? Are there any changes anybody have? If there are none, can I have a motion to approve?
So
I make a motion to approve the minute.
Okay,
Scott
Scott.
Oldendorf.
And can we have a second?
second.
That was that, Eric? Okay, great. All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move on and consider the minutes approved. And we'll move on to item H, which is the discussion and action, and we'll start with the director's update from Jackson.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Good morning, everyone. Thank you as always, for your participation in the committee. We appreciate everything that you guys do for us. And it looks like we have almost a full house. We're just missing one person or
Rob. Yeah.
Rob's only one. So it's great to see everybody here. I'm glad you're all enjoying your burrows. We have burrows for everyone over here. Just saying. At any rate, my first update, I just wanted to talk briefly about the Sawadita topic, the regional facility that we're looking at. That's in our future plans. Just an update. We did have, the first thing that we're doing is hiring a program manager to lead that effort and help go through all those steps required to have a new facility in operation, similar to what we did with ROMP, and a little bit on a smaller scale, but still significant undertaking, and it'll be very helpful. Iterate, we had a number of firms submit applications for that position or proposals for that position, and staff and the group they put together for interview. We had three quality firms perform interviews with us, and we did select, going through those are always interesting and challenging for us, but we did pick a firm, and we are now in negotiations to make sure the scope is full and complete, and to look at the pricing, for that scope level. And we should hopefully be wrapped up soon, but at any rate, that's that update. And I think I mentioned it last time, but just I'll repeat it on the Sarita front. We continue to talk with the town of Sawadita, obviously, because they're key stakeholders in what we do out there. But for the longest time, we've been looking at this joint partnership, but the town has kind of informed us that they're not sure how they will be able to afford being a partner at this point. And so we may continue on with or without their partnership, but that's still a final decision has to be made. But it's looking like they may not be able to participate with us at this time. So if that is the case, because in the financial rate workbook that we have, we budget for the, at least our current estimated cost of that capital project, but we showed a 25% partnership contribution to the cost in our rate workbook. But if in fact it ultimately goes that we're not going to do that capacity for Sarita as part of the initial project, we won't obviously get 25% contribution, but we would downsize the project a similar amount. So I think the cost really won't change significantly. I mean, it will be at least the cost for Pima County in our rate workbook won't change significantly, because if we don't get the 25% contribution and we downsize the project, it'll be very close to a similar number. But we'll have to work out those details and make sure that's where we ended up with the town of Sarita. But that creates a whole bunch of other conversations, and of course, we'll continue to keep the committee updated on those as we proceed, but that's just the latest information. I just wanted to make sure you had that. The budget, I put budget on here really because I believe that's probably should be and probably is going to be the lion's share of the conversation today is about budget stuff. And you're going to see, obviously, I think this is Ellen's last week, and I think she's actually off for the rest of the week. So we maybe have seen Ellen for the last time, but Art and his team are on the call and will also help, with this discussion. But what we're going to show, we've gone through, we Wastewater have gone through, we were required to submit our best final request for budget for next year last Friday. So we had, we have all these moving pieces where all the different divisions and unit managers submit their budgets, and then they all get inputted, and we finally, get to see a very rough request of amount of that we're requesting, but there's still a lot of inputs that have to go in that don't necessarily come from wastewater. And for instance, one of those is like employee benefits. What are the benefits going to do, and how might that impact our budget? So that's something that will still have to be finalized, but nonetheless, our request came in, and we had a very short time frame. We went through it. My senior management team and I, we went through it, and we were able to remove about 1.4 million from what all of the different unit managers and divisions submitted. And finance just got that on Friday. And looking at where we are at today, the rate workbook that's going to be a key part of this discussion. Originally when we talked about what type of rate increases we were looking at, we started a conversation of a 1.75% user fee increase for 4 consecutive years. Well, the last meeting we had, it popped up, and now it's going to be here for discussion. But it was necessary as finance goes through all those calculations that put us so close to the edge with still a few unknowns in the budget to finalize the budget, that the first year of the 4 years of rate increases was changed to 3%. And the following 3 years will then be at 1.75. And so that's a somewhat of a change, but it again keeps all of our criteria, such as the debt service ratio and the cash reserves and all that, at the right place. But going to 1.75 for all 4 years was just too close to the edge. And especially with some of the things, like I used the example of benefits, not having the final number for what the benefits will be. We think it could go up a little, which would even stress us more on the 1.75 for 4 years. So we're recommending and leaning towards 3% for year one and 1.75 for the following 3 years. And with that, that's just part of this conversation. But here's some more challenges just to make the group aware of. So it's been 8 years since we've done a rate increase, so we're a little rusty and working through all the criteria. Well, one of the things we'll talk about today is 2 potential public meetings, but it's hard to schedule a public meeting until we know we have all the final numbers and where we are and we're all in agreement. And so the chicken and egg conversation, and it keeps kind of pushing us a little bit. And so we thought, well, the board has to, I mean, the board doesn't have to do anything, but the rate increase needs to be on the budget submission to the board. So they're saying, yeah, we support, this rate increase. And so in order to have that to the board, we need these public meetings and whatnot. I think it gets real complicated if we don't get it on this budget activity with the board, if we were to push it out too far. But again, that's uncharted waters that I don't recall how that will impact us. But nonetheless, trying to get to this final stage where, the committee is comfortable and has the information they need to make the recommendation that they're going to make, or the lobbying they're going to have with their respective appointee, board members and stuff. This is really, we need a lot of feedback from you all today and ask all the right questions. But besides getting the 2 public meetings held and getting everything into the board in time, once the board approves it, assuming that's their action, then it can go into, the rate increase can go 30 days after the board approval. And so if their final budget activity is done in June or July, we're thinking August or maybe even September, just to be safe, would be the earliest we could raise the rates. And there was some talk about, well, maybe we want to just start it on January. Let's make sure we, put it off to the first of the new year. Well, we received some information from the city of Tucson, in particular Tucson Water. They're going through a complete change in software for their billing activities, and they're projecting that their transition will take place around January, and they don't want to make any changes while they're going through the old software to the new software. And so that's something we're up against, that, hey, what if we got to that point and then they wouldn't let us make the changes, and we'll have to even move it back further. So we're continuing to push to get our budget, all these activities done closer to the end of this fiscal year so that we can implement it sooner in the new fiscal year. But all these steps and getting people, making sure everybody's on the same page, and, hopefully coming up with the positive recommendation to the board and stuff. That's what we're going to work on. So I'm babbling a lot, and I'm going to stop there to just allow these conversations and direction to go. But that's all I got for my update at this time.
May I ask a question? I realize it's a short time frame. Is there I don't even know if this is possible, but if we needed to meet as a full group again, would it be possible to set a special meeting to make a decision if we weren't, if we want to push it quicker than the monthly meeting?
Yeah, so that's always a possibility for a special meeting, but it's also very challenging because you have to have notice and you have to get everybody aligned and making sure they can do it. And then a lot of times when you do a special meeting, yeah, you can get a quorum, but we won't have the full group, and some people get alienated or bummed out about that.
Right.
So, this is, maybe this is why we have 12 of our 13 members, because this is the core function of this committee, is to talk about budgets and financial stuff.
Right.
And so here's everybody, and we're going to dive right into it, roll up our sleeves. But special meetings are just a challenge. I'm not saying we couldn't do it, and I'm just hoping we don't have to, but the process will take its due course, and we'll see where we end up. So
Thank you.
you bet.
All right. So we have our work cut out for us today. That's all of the directors update. Then we have a technical services and engineering update by Jaime Rivera.
This is not going. Okay, hold on, Jaime. It's stuck. I don't know what it's.
It's easier for you to be seen and be heard.
Hey. There you go.
Control.
Work. If it doesn't, just tell me.
All right, good morning, everybody. Here's an update on the technical services and engineering. We did an update not long ago, so I'll just focus on events that are underway and we're working on at the moment. kind of a quick view of how the division is set up. We got 7 areas, and here are the details of and personnel in each one of them. Some areas that we're working on the administration side, we're putting together a package for the board to update the ordinance. And there are several items that we want to update. Some housekeeping acronyms and definitions that we want to clarify or update. Another item is the discount section on the ordinance was developed and implemented many years ago, probably in the 70s or earlier. And since then, it's not used frequently. It is mostly a fee or reimbursement to developers for excess capacity on a line that they need to install, regardless of if we provide a reimbursement or not. So we're looking at a sunset of that particular fee or reimbursement. The way it's structured, it will be sunset whoever or whatever developers are already in the system or have discounts available, they'll be able to use them. But we'll stop offering those going forward once the board hopefully approves this adjustment to the ordinance. Next one down is private sewage connections. We have a lot of HCS repairs, and they're increasing in number as the news goes out, and plumbers are more aware that the county will help owners repair HCS breaks when they're in the right of way. We're getting a lot more requests for them. And another concern is that with the increase of rental units, including whole subdivisions that are focusing on rental rather than home ownership, we're looking at making specifics for homeowners to take advantage of this help the county provides rather than help a business or a for-profit entity make a repair. So we're trying to focus our funds on helping homeowners rather than businesses. Another item we're looking at, and you heard Jackson about the effort to work on fee and rate increases. It's in the list, but we may keep it together or fork that one out depending on how long the process takes. And if we can keep them together, we will. Otherwise, we'll probably split those into different board actions. And one miscellaneous item at the end is just updates on tables and fees on rates if any of these items are presented to the board. Going on the development side, there are 3 main areas we're working on at the moment. These are 3 projects that are being discussed and coordinated for sewer service agreements. First one is Cascada. It's in the northeast or northwest, I'm sorry, by the Twin Peaks I-10 area. It's a big development, and we're working with them on their agreement. The next one is Verano. Verano is in the southlands, south of the airport. Big development, also working on their sewer service agreement. And the last one is Vale Crossings. That's in the east side of town, and we're also working with them on their agreement. So those are the main active developments that are in the plans. Few projects that we're working on. Jackson mentioned the Sahuarita facility, 6 to 8 MGD, built out capacity of about 24 MGD, similar in size eventually, or at the end, are built out to this One Nueva facility. Our scale is already underway, and we're aiming to have a treatment facility up and running in 2031, 2032, the latest. And our budget is currently $200 million for that facility. Tied to that new plant, we need an interceptor that will connect the current discharge point of the Green Valley facility to the new facility in Sahuarita. That's about almost 8 miles of interceptor from the existing facility to the new location. It's going to be between 24, 48 inches in diameter, and it needs to be in place along with the new plant. So it's the same schedule. And we're budgeting about $40 million for it. Again, all of those budgetary numbers are going to be fine-tuned as we work with their program manager to get more details on what the effort is and how much the current costs are for different items. The next one down is the Canoa Ranch Interceptor. It's phased into two projects. Currently, we're working on the phase number one that's connecting from the rest area in I-19 all the way north to the Canoa Ranch area. The project is already about 30%, little over 30% design. We just selected a CMAR to work with us to finalize the design and start construction. We're budgeting about $13 million, and it's going to start construction hopefully at this fiscal year, and it'll continue through next fiscal year. It will be finished next fiscal year, 2026. Second phase, it's in the book. It'll connect the existing Rebecca Junction Lagoon to the endpoint of this first phase, and that will basically allow us to close the Rebecca Junction facility and connect all that system to the Green Valley facility, which eventually leads to the Sahuarita. So it'll connect all of that southern Pima County area to the new facility once it's all implemented. On the east side, we're currently working with the UOA Tech Park group. They're developing some facilities in that area, and we're joining forces with them. We're augmenting their proposed sewer for their development to a 27-inch or so sewer interceptor extension for the SEI. So once it's installed, this connection will serve as a gateway for the east side, south of the tracks. And the plan is to eventually go all the way to Bale Road, town of Bale, once it's all implemented and constructed. But this will be the first leg for that SEI augmentation and expansion. A quick look at the overall program for CIP next year. We're budgeting for about $62.9 million. 39 of those are in treatment projects that are either augmentation, new facilities or systems or processes, and rehabilitation and repair. About $23 million for conveyance, augmentation, rehabilitation and repair projects. The main driver for the increase in the CIP program is mainly the Sahuarita program. And if you look at the 10-year program, you see a bump, and it'll come back down to the standard 50-55. We try to keep as a standard yearly budget for CIP projects. And now we can flip to the main program to give an update on the whole program as it's budgeted for next year.
2 seconds.
Hold it.
I don't know why it's still.
Let's see.
We're not going through the CIP, are we? We're just showing it, or what's the?
He's just gonna give just a really brief.
Yeah, it was a
update on it. Hopefully you all can see this. It's a little small, but you all should have a copy of the whole program with your package. Basically, it's the first 5 years of the program. Details, we have probably just gonna jump through the main ones. And if there are any questions, please go ahead and. First block is the treatment, rehabilitation and repair program, TRP XX, depending on the fiscal year. We set aside about $8 million in this bucket for maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, and any needs that the treatment facilities might have. So that continues for the next 5 years. We invest in the treatment facilities. The next project we have down the list is the Building 14 Central Operations. You're probably familiar with that one, where we're trying to centralize all the operations personnel of terrestrials that are scattered through the plant in one central facility. The next one down is the clarifier. Building 4 upgrades or updates or rehabilitation. It's reaching the end of the fiscal year, the useful life, and it's in need of repair. So we're looking at rehabilitating that facility. The digester facility is currently under procurement. That will add a third digester tank to the 2 newer digester tank complex in terrestrials. Next one, we have the Class A biosolids that's wrapping up in 2 years. We're currently including the PONDAS process in this project, and it'll take another year for construction, and the 26-27 fiscal year is when we'll kind of close out that project. Sahuarita, we discussed the Sahuarita plant. Here's the current forecast for that facility. This is the interceptor that goes along with the Sahuarita plant. Canoa Ranch, which we're aiming to close out start this year and close out the following year. And the U of A interceptor that we just showed in the development area of the Dale area. We have some rehabilitations for interceptors on schedule, farther into the later parts of the 5-year plan. And we have buckets for odor control and pump station maintenance and repair. You're familiar with those, and we can go in details if anybody has any questions. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed when you showed the Canoa Ranch, you showed a little over $4 million for the next 2 years. That only added up to just under 10 million. And yet your budget you're looking at in your earlier slide was 13. There's a little bit of disconnect there for me.
That's correct. So we've been working on that Canoa Ranch for a couple of years. We've spent some dollars in design. And if you recall, we had to design it 2 or 3 times. We were originally on the east side of I-19. We have to flip over to the west side and go through a couple of iterations with the engineer to basically find that sweet spot where it was feasible to install it at a reasonable cost. So there's some money spent already. And we also purchased the pipe that will be used in this project as trying to keep costs down while plastic prices were going up. So we pre-purchased the pipe. So there's a good amount of money that was also spent on the pipe that's already in our possession and it's on storage, ready for the new contractor to use it for the installation.
Thank you for that information. So basically you're looking at a little over $4.5 million of construction costs for each phase. Is that how I'm understanding that?
Yeah, so we're estimating at the moment that it's going to be about $8.5 million to install that pipe.
But we only have enough time for phase one.
Correct, phase one.
Yeah, so that cost, Eric, is for phase one.
The the total 9 million you have set aside is the cost for phase one.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Aisha, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. My question is, at our December meeting of the CIP subcommittee, we reviewed the CIP and we had a pretty good discussion about things, can change, but we gave a kind of a general endorsement of that, of the CIP at that time. I'm just wondering, are there any major changes, to consider or to look at in what you just presented?
No, they're
looks
not.
similar.
This is the same program that you already saw. So we can fly through it. I think the budgets are not changed, and this is basically the final tally for the upcoming 5-6 years.
So, the first project you showed is about 8 million for rehab and section treatment plants. And that was just in this coming fiscal year. So that's just a one-off thing, or is that something you do?
It's repeated for 5 years. It's like the standard amount that we, there's a list of all kinds of things that need to be done or things that come up, and hopefully that covers it. But that seems about the right amount, but we put it in every year.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see it out there, so that's what I thought, but thanks for clarifying.
So if there are no other questions, that is my update.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any more questions? We're good? Thank you. That was great. Really helpful. All right. So now we're going to go to the CIP 5-year plan review. You did that. Yep. Same one. And now we're going to talk about the proposed rate increase. Did you want to start with the public meeting doodle poll results? Or how would we like to leave this?
I think let's just keep going in order if we could.
Okay.
And so, I'm jumping back in here, but Marla and Jeanette both have this down pat. But in general, the two best dates for the doodle poll were March 7th and March 12th. And we thought, okay, that potentially could be the dates, but then, that means that we need to kind of be supportive of where we're at with the rate workbook and the recommendations today. And if that's not possible, then it's doubtful we would be able to do the March dates, and so again, that chicken or egg, which one comes first? And we just need to go through these discussions. But right now, March 7th and March 12th are potential public meeting dates. If everybody or the majority think we're in a good place and can proceed and get all the final values and things that finance will share and tell us about here shortly, or we might have to do another doodle poll and just, wait till after another meeting. And so again, it's just, I'm having a challenge with this, trying to get it all locked down and everybody, supporting it or recommending in a positive way so we can move forward. But I just don't know what I don't know. And it's whatever the committee wants to do type of thing. I can fill out a form that says you agree and just have you all sign it. We'll move on and eat the rest of the boroughs. But, you guys always put a lot of effort in this part of our business, and I'm glad you do. So fulfill your roles here. Marla or Jeanette, what do you want to add?
Well, I was just going to add, because the doodle poll and Jeanette got it pulled up there, did show the dates with the most responsive put it in is March 7th and March 12th, but we still don't know if the committee would like to have daytime or evening.
Right.
We have one daytime, one evening type of meeting. So we still need to make sure that we would have a quorum and choose a location, choose the type of meeting. And we do have a 15-day notice requirement for a public meeting. So if we choose March 7th, that means we need to get our newspaper ad in by February 20th. So again, I think as far as the committee's concerned and the things you need to talk about, we're kind of getting into a very tight time frame if we're going to try to hold the public meetings in March.
Exactly.
So maybe we should conclude move on to the discussion about the decisions we're making today and then revisit the meeting date.
Sounds good.
Okay,
That's good.
so,
And was this, two opposite, geographical locations or anything like
That
that?
hasn't even
we
been
haven't
determined.
Oh,
decided
okay.
any of that. But before,
The time of day and the locations, geographic locations are components we'll get to when we agree on the dates.
With just one comment on the dates. I noticed one of them was Friday, which is March 7th, so I would suggest consideration of making Wednesday your public hearing that's in the evening.
Yeah.
Because schools get
Yeah,
out.
we felt the
early.
same way.
Yes.
Yeah.
and it does look like there are some later dates that were options. What's the requirement of how many of us there need to be?
7 minimum.
You have to have 7 minimum for a quorum.
Okay, so so also the 19th and the 21st would work. That looks to me
Well,
on here.
yeah, the 4th, the,
Yeah, oh, yeah, and those two.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at pushing it back.
Oh, yeah,
Because of
the 19th and the 23rd.
would also, okay. But everybody who said yes needs to come.
Yeah.
All right, so,
And some people didn't reply, so maybe it would be better once we pinpoint a date, people can make it work, but we just don't know, so.
right, of course. Right, okay, so, so that said, who would like to lead the discussion on the financial plan? Would that be Matt or at this point?
Matt, and we're gonna give our trial by fire, I think.
Okay, Matt and Art. We've had a lot of discussions of this in the financial subcommittee. I was unable to attend the last meeting, and we also have a financial subcommittee report later, but maybe we can just fold that all in.
Yeah, let Matt go ahead with this report
Why
and
don't you go ahead, Matt?
Okay, excuse me. Good morning. Yeah, the financial subcommittee last met last week on January 15th. And our main item of focus was the draft RWRD rate workbook, which will form the basis of the 2025 financial plan and provide the justification for any proposed rate increase. At the meeting, we identified quite early that the increases projected in our 2024 financial plan, as Jackson earlier mentioned, may not be sufficient to maintain a full 1.3 debt service ratio for next year. But finance was unable to tell us how much of a rate increase, if any, would be required until wastewater completed and submitted its proposed budget, which I think Jackson mentioned happened Friday, at least in most part. The draft rate workbook presented at our meeting did include, excuse me, the 3% wastewater utility fee that we previously called the connection fee increase for each year for the next 4 years as projected last year. But it also included a 3% increase for the user volume fee and the service charge for next year, and then increasing another 1.75% for each of the next 3 years, instead of the 1.75% increases we previously projected for next year for those two fees. The subcommittee chose to withhold taking any action on the draft rate workbook based on the preliminary numbers until after finance had a chance to study wastewater's final budget request. So that's kind of where I and the subcommittee leave it. I think Ellen had mentioned that she was going to at least be able to present the assumptions section of the rate workbook, but I don't know what may have transpired between Friday and now that would enable finance to give us any more as far as the rate workbook goes. So I may be passing the baton here to Art or Michelle if she's with us today.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Art, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, that's probably my cue there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so I have it correct, is it Chair Zucker? Is that correct?
Claire, yeah.
Claire,
Claire,
yeah, but
Chair Claire.
Chair Claire. Thank you. We actually do have updated rate books with I believe Jackson's budget submittal included in those rate workbooks at both 1.175 and the 3% that Jackson referenced in his opening remarks a little bit earlier this morning. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll walk through those two assumption sets based on the 3% and the 1.75%. Initially, I will tell you that finance's recommendation is going to be at the 3%, and you'll see why when I share the screen. The other thing that I would think it might be prudent to consider, just because of the amount of work that goes into a public hearing, and I'll ask the question to the committee just to ponder on as we're going through the discussion, is would there be any appetite to recommend a multi-year increase or where the board might approve a set of 2-year rates, with the understanding that we would obviously come back after the first year and revisit as we get actuals in our budget to actuals and we see how the plan is performing. But I think what that might do is provide a level of transparency to our ratepayers over a 2-year period, and it also provides some level of efficiency for the board of Supervisors and this board as far as having the number of public meetings that are required. And we go, it's a long process. So maybe something to consider as we march down the path of a potential rate approval. That being said, I'm going to share my screen. Is there a preference on what assumptions that we want to see first? Do we want to see the 175 or do we want to see the 3%? Is there a preference from the committee?
No, maybe start with the 3% and then show how the 1.75 isn't meeting the need.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And Art, before you jump in, let me just make a comment on something Matt said. I just, my memory may be a little different than Matt's, and so we'll arm wrestle to see whose memory's more exact. But on the, what we call the connection fee, the wastewater utility fee, there's, goes by a few different names, but I thought I heard you say that one, it shows all 4 years at 3% on that connection fee, a 3% increase. And that hasn't changed. That's what we initially proposed from, where we are now to what it really should be, getting closer to where it should be. So I thought I heard you say, Matt, that one increased too. That one did not increase. I think that 3% has been there the whole time.
Right.
Well,
okay, just checking.
Well, while we're stopped, it was my understanding that we were asking the board for the whole 4 years. Is that not true?
I think we're going to show the 4 years and request
Yes.
that 4 years, but Art's comment but each year we'll confirm that is
Okay.
still a valid thing. It's like, here's what we believe in a 4-year plan will
Okay.
need to be, but each year we still will go back to the board in case, what if it needs to be
Okay.
1.95, I'm just,
Will we need to do public hearings every year?
not if it's approved, on the 4 years.
That's what I thought. Unless there's a change. Or an
Unless there's a
increase.
change in the recommendation, but
Right.
if it rides, it's done and we don't have to have those.
That was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, do I need to make this bigger? Because I don't know how
Yeah,
big it
we
is on the
can't.
screen.
We can't see it here. Thank you.
Tell me when.
That's probably okay.
Okay,
I'm gonna-
so, and to Matt's point earlier, Ellen has left. Her last day officially in office was yesterday. So this is what she presented to the finance subcommittee last week. Again, I'll call your attention to a couple of things. This forecast is with the December numbers. So it is updated with Jackson's budget information that was submitted last Friday. And I won't try and attempt to do this whole entire presentation by myself. So I'll ask Michelle and my team that's on the call to jump in as and where necessary. So I think what we're talking about here, based on my understanding of the prior conversations, is the volume fee at 3% here on the assumption set in FY 25-26, and then the 175 going out into the next 3 fiscal years here at 175. There is also a 3% proposed 3% increase on the flat service charge here in 26, and then 175 in the out years. I'm not sure if there is any additional discussion that needs to be had on that front, or where we'll focus our energy and our time is on the volume fee. So if we move down and show the impacts of that 3% that has on the ratio, the rating agency ratio, both in 25-26, you can see it's slightly above the requirement at 130. And then not only that, but the 1.3% sets us up nicely in the out years. And I'll point that out because on the 175, you'll see a difference, and we'll be barely skating by on the ratio in the out years. So 3% in 26, and then 175 in 27, 28, and 29 yields us a 133, 133, and 135 ratio in the out years, respectively. Couple of caveats that I'll put in that Jackson alluded to in his opening comments. We do have yet to go in our 26 budget preparation. There is a benefit recalc that occurs, and that recalc won't occur for about another week and a half to 2 weeks. And we are expecting that to increase costs across, increase expenditures across all county budgets. So wastewater would not be omitted from that. And so we are going to see that increase in a couple weeks. And so that will have an adverse impact on the 1.34. The other thing that Jackson and I talked about a little bit yesterday is I want to call your attention to the O&M expense rate factor. You can see going back to 23-24, the actuals were represented about a 7.5% increase over the year before. The adopted budget had an 8.3% increase. Good news for 25 is it's forecasted to come in at 6%. And then what we've included in the assumption set is a 3.5% for 26, and then 3% moving out in the out years. And I'll just pause there. And my comment is that a sufficient enough O&M expense based on our expenditure history? If we adopt a lower rate at the sewer volume fee, it puts additional pressure to manage those O&M expenditures that have trended higher than what we've budgeted in the last couple of years. So some additional food for thought and some consideration for the committee there. You can see that the 3% in the sewer volume fee yields 118 million projected in 26, with total revenues here net of operating and maintenance at 83.9 million. I will also let you know that this particular worksheet, as I scroll down, I don't want you to get you all nauseated here, but as we scroll down, you can see that we removed the Sahuarita funding proposal that Jackson mentioned earlier, but we have not yet modified the capital costs that Jackson mentioned would be reduced by scaling back that facility that was planned to be probably much larger with Saudita included, and much maybe a little smaller if they are not going to be included in the construction of that facility. So those CIP costs in the out years have remained unchanged pending final consideration from Jackson and his team. So with that, I will pause there for any questions, and I'll ask my team if they have anything else to add before we take questions or move to the 1.175 scenario.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Oh, yeah, Alan?
Yeah, Jackson, Art just mentioned Sarita, and did I understand that right? He pulled out the revenue that you would expect from Sarita, but didn't reduce the overall capital expenditure.
Yeah, I figure we do those together, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, this just
Yeah,
came off the
that-
press
that's-
last night.
That's gonna skew things.
Right, there's
Yeah.
gonna be a little
either
heavily
pull
weighted.
Together or.
Yeah. But I will say this, and that's true, if we were to reduce the size of the plant, which we would do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one thing that we do when we, for the most part, we have this habit of forecasting capital expenditures in today's dollars. And if we're really not building Sarita till 2029, 2030 or something, there's a number of years of inflation. So
Yeah.
is this a time where maybe we predict future dollars? And, so again, that's part of the discussion we're having. That's why we haven't changed the project cost until we meet with finance and have a discussion.
Yeah, no, but thanks for pointing that out, Art, because I think that is relevant.
Yep.
What we're talking.
So,
Yeah, and I see Michelle has her hand up to maybe add a little color
Yeah.
there.
right, Michelle, why don't you go ahead?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, although the CIP number hasn't changed, the debt service is where the debt service was before, where Saudita was participating. So the county's portion of the plant expense is what it was before. We didn't increase the debt service to cover what Saudita is not going to cover. So I just want to clarify, although the CIP number at the bottom includes the numbers that Jaime presented, we know those numbers are going to change, but it's not going to impact this rate scenario because this rate scenario has the assumption that only the Pima County portion of the debt, if that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify that piece.
So, thank you, Michelle. So I have a quick question. This doesn't include the inflationary costs of materials or labor or any of the things that happen in the future. Is there a prediction of that in here? Because if not, we want to make sure that we don't underestimate things, that we are on the high side rather than the low side. So,
Yeah.
So go ahead, Art, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I believe, Chair Zucker, that is captured in the O&M expense inflationary factor.
Okay.
As again, this is this may be my third time looking at this workbook. So, Michelle, is that accurate? The inflationary, what Chair Zucker is talking about is captured in the inflationary factor and on the O&M expenses.
The O&M expense has an inflator. The CIP information is what the department provides. So if when the department is getting the engineer's estimate for projects, if they're not including an inflationary factor for a project that begins in several years, I don't have visibility to that. We're using the information that Jackson and Jaime's team put together for those CIP projects. I guess very naively, I would assume that the engineer's estimate on the projects would include an inflationary factor, but if that's not true and that's something we need to address, just let me know.
I'm just going to say, it's been 8 years since our last rate increase. And yes, our costs go up because we are very susceptible to inflation because we buy so many goods and services on the market. And guess what? If they go up, and we had over 9% inflation for almost 3 consecutive years. And so Art looked at the historic O&M numbers, 7.46, 8.34, 6.12. That's the actual impact to us with those heavy years of inflation. And now we're seeing, okay, it's coming back down and we're projecting, okay, what we submitted is only 3.5% for this next fiscal year. And then we're projecting a 3% inflationary.
Okay, so it is built in.
It's in there, but my crystal ball is no better than yours or
Yeah.
anyone else's. So.
My crystal ball says things won't be good.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, did you, or who is that? Eric, did you have a question? And then let's move on to the 175s after Eric.
Okay, I thought at our finance committee meeting that the flat rate service charge would stay at 3% over the full 4 years and not drop back down. But I can't find the paperwork right now, so I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, Chair Zucker, Eric, Mr. Sold, if I may, I'm looking at the draft workbook that Ms. Moulton presented whenever it was last week.
Right.
And the flat service charge on the presentation that she presented was 3% in 26, and then 175 in 27, 28, and 29.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I concur, that's what I've got screenshots from our meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's move on, Art, for time's sake, to get through the next one.
Sure. So the next estimate or projection, let me make this a little bigger, is with the 175 here. Again, December forecast.
Just a little bigger, if you don't mind.
Sure.
If you just, thank you. That's good. Thank you.
So we did two things on this workbook. We moved let me scroll back over. We moved the rate factor, the volume fee to 175, and we also moved the flat service charge from 3% to 175 here. I'm pretty sure everything else remained the same. And so as we take a look, you'll notice a difference in our overall
Scroll up a
volumetric
little bit
fee.
more.
Scroll up.
Scroll up. I'm sorry. Scroll down a little more. There you go. Now we can see it.
Yeah.
We can see it.
So I didn't write down or remember the cost, but the revenues will go down because we're lowering the input. And so you can see the rating agency ratio here in 25-26, just above the 130 requirement at the 1.75. And then, as I mentioned in my opening comments on the prior projection, in the out years, it puts added pressure at 1.3 across the board, with a small uptick in 29 if we reduce those fees down to 175. This will make it challenging, and all that more important for Jackson and his team to monitor the expenditures in the out years. And so a 3% increase on both the flat service fee and the volume fee does provide added flexibility, especially as we're heading into a period of, as Chair Zucker said, unknown inflation, with what the current administration may or may not do to head that off. So as I mentioned at the outset, it's my recommendation, based on the information that we have today, that we strongly consider, and the committee is encouraged to approve the rates at 3% for both the flat service charge and the volume fee, because it just adds added flexibility to both the wastewater department as well as finance as we go out and secure financing for these capital projects at the lowest possible rate for Pima County and our ratepayers. Michelle, team, do you have anything to add before I turn it back over?
No, I think that covers it.
Hey, Art, this is Jackson. Can you just tell the committee, when do you believe finance will have the final, the next year's recommended or proposed budget, there's still some values that, wastewater doesn't provide, unlike the benefits is the example I used, but anything that's still outstanding, when do you expect to have a final or as near final as we can be budget before it goes to the board?
That's a good question, Jackson.
So it's really close to me.
This is where you phone a friend and say, okay, Michelle, you're back on again.
No, I'm pausing because supplemental requests, we're going to present supplemental requests to the board on the 18th of February. And I'm going to be presenting the CIP to the Board of Supervisors on March 18th. And so I wouldn't anticipate sort of a recommended budget from the county administrator's office to the Board of Supervisors until the May timeframe, after we've had the opportunity to finalize those discussions with the board. And then as we work our way to that, we'll finalize the benefit numbers, fine tune the CIP. County administration will have an opportunity to weigh in on what her recommendation is going to be with respect to supplementals across all of the departments. And then we'll present, I believe the timing is that we'll present the county administrator's recommended budget in May, and have the all relevant public hearings on the budget. And then final adoption will occur sometime in June, maybe the first meeting in July. I'm not clear exactly on that timing, but May, June is when we're anticipating the recommended budget, which I think gets to your point, Jackson.
And so we can't wait for the final budget, because then you'd have to do public meetings and, then we're going to be crunched for time. So, as we talk about these numbers, this is the best, this is where we think we are with all the information we have, and they're very close. But for instance, like the benefits category, what if it adds $1 to the budget or $100,000 to the budget? Some value will change, but I think the committee just needs to take that into consideration. And as long as it's within a reasonable expectation, we should be able to continue to proceed and take actions. But, when Art mentioned supplementals, that's another activity the board has to agree, because all of the departments in the county are going to go to the board and say, well, you wanted us to lock in on our last year's base budget. Well, here's something I need to change. Here's why. Can you grant me this increase? And they may say yes, they may say no. Right now, I still do not know exactly what if the department has a need for a supplemental. But even though Friday we turned in our budget and we cut 1.4 million out of what was initially submitted, we're still looking for some additional cuts. Number one, it would be in everybody's best interest if we do not have to request a supplemental for wastewater. And I believe we may be less than $300,000 away from that. And although we cut 1.4 million, I'm going to scrape to find 300,000 or something. I'm just making up some numbers because I don't know exactly what they are, but that's probably in the range. And so we are still going to try and drive our budget lower than what you see here today, but Art still has other external inputs like benefits and stuff that may drive it the other way. So it's we're playing a cat and mouse game for a little bit, but hopefully as you have these discussions that you take into consideration that there may be some minor additional tweaks, but not enough to change this intent of the conversation.
And just for a little perspective, it's my recollection that last year we put this off because we felt we didn't want to do an extra year, and we had looked at some of these numbers and said, oh, we may have to do a bigger hike because in order to keep our debt service ratio low enough. So we have already put this off a year, and this is one of the consequences that we may need to do a slightly bigger hike at the beginning. Okay, we have several people. I think Anne Marie has her. Was Eric first? Eric, want to go ahead, and then Anne Marie?
A couple of points. Number one, this is a budget, and therefore, we're looking at a crystal ball that's going to have a little fog in it. I'm curious if you look back, Jackson, at your debt ratio over the last, maybe the last 4 years at the end of the year, once everything is finished. You take a look at what happened in 23, 24, you're at 1.5. You were able to do whatever you had to do, and that debt ratio went up. And I'm wondering, you know, we show I think the worst case scenario in our debt ratio for the outlying years coming up. But I think that there probably is room in there that debt ratio will actually go up a little bit, and that we're not as strangled in getting it down. The other point that I'd like to bring up, and it's something that kind of is confusing and bothersome to me, is what we hold in reserves. We have a $20 million emergency reserve. We have another $25 million operational reserve, and then there is another reserve that pushes it up close to $90 million. And I'm wondering if there is, in reality, if that is actually needed, and that maybe we take a hard look at those reserves and say, okay, maybe we don't need that extra 40 sitting in reserve, and we can use that over a period of 3 or 4 years to help bolster the budget, number one. Number two, if we have
Eric.
Yes.
Eric, I hate to interrupt you, but I believe that reserve discussion was held in the financial subcommittee, and it wasn't brought forward to this committee because of that. I mean, we can talk about it, but it's quite an in-depth conversation. And the thought of the committee was that it was needed to keep a stable operations going forward. So I just wanted to put that out, that we did discuss that. And if we're going to discuss this, we should bring the full discussion to the committee. I just don't know that we have time today before we make this decision. So I wanted to add that to your comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll be more than happy to push that towards Matt to have on the agenda for our next financial committee meeting. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yes.
They look at us for what's going forward.
Mm.
So just because it recovered, I mean, that's great or it's not great, but when they give us those ratings, they're looking at what we're predicting in our budgets going forward.
Right. So, yeah. Did everybody hear that?
I could not, I heard the
Yeah,
question, but I could not hear the response.
No. So the was explained by Ellen that even if you look backwards and see that we were able to make some gains on that debt number, the ratio, even if you look backwards and see that is not what what the financial institutions look at with our debt ratio going forward. So although that was a success in those ways, we cannot consider that when we're looking at these projections and anticipate that there might be some ground gained.
Correct. And so what I'll say,
is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
What I'll say just broadly to that is the rating agencies look at a few different metrics when they rate our debt. One of them is operating reserves, cash reserves, operating revenues. They look at the board's willingness to increase fees to remain sustainable in our revenue base moving forward. And so all of those are key factors, as I'm sure Ms. Moulton pointed out in the conversations leading up to this meeting and beyond. And so there are very key metrics in our ability to remain very highly rated, which the higher the rating, the lower the interest costs are on our borrowing. And so they are very important. The other thing I'll say about the cash reserves is I know historically, when we've issued debt, we have also defeased a fair amount of debt in conjunction with the new debt sale. So while we're issuing new debt, we're also paying off higher interest costing debt to the county. And so that is how we use and maintain those reserves. So I would caution against doing anything that would cause those reserves to slip, because those reserves and the ratio are what has provided us with the ability to issue very low cost debt and remain our debt service to remain very affordable in the out years.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Anne Marie, your hand was up and went back down. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple comments. Just first, I want to commend the department for operating for so many years without a rate increase. I think that is a tribute to how they've been managing the department and the projects. But and as you know, I am usually not a supporter of rate increases, but at this point, I remember the debt service ratio discussion, and when we board made the recommendation on maintaining the certain debt ratio, at this point, I would actually support a 3% increase on the service charge and the volume fee, and a multi-year, as long as we have sufficient public hearings to give the public an opportunity to comment on that, which would mean evening and afternoon and geographically spaced. So, and then just quickly to the reserves, I may be the only one left on the board who remembers the Speedway sinkhole and why we set the emergency fund reserve, because of the amount of money it took to fix that sinkhole. That's when the board actually this board made that recommendation to maintain the emergency reserve. And I also support what Art just said about maintaining the operating reserves as well, for being able to get or obtain the relatively low cost funding for the department. But the emergency reserve in particular was recommended by this board because of the Speedway sinkhole, which was unexpected and very expensive. And that's why we determined as a board here that we recommended to maintain those type of reserves. So I would really be opposed to any use of those reserves to offset any fee increases at this time. So.
Yes.
If I may just jump in to round out the discussion. Okay, I'll try and be very loud. To round out the discussion is just that Claire alluded to it, and Anne Marie is kind of getting at it. We've had a lot of discussion in that financial subcommittee meeting about the pillars, and we've got a good white paper. We've gone over those, and there was not consensus to change the pillars in any significant way. And the budget that is being presented here is honoring those pillars and those principles that the financial subcommittee is leaving standing. So I just want to make that recommendation to the full board. We're not here to discuss those. We're here to discuss acting upon those on the department's behalf.
Exactly. Thank you very much for that clarification. All right, so I'm going to invite anybody for
Eric's hand is up still.
Eric's hand.
Oh, just put it down. Never mind.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I just want to invite everybody to add any comments at this time, ask any questions, and then I'm going to ask for the question. Yeah, for a motion.
So I just want to give a perspective. You know, I've been with the department over 20 years, and I'm just going to I know I'm going to go off and tell a longer story than I intend to, but early on when I joined the department in 2004, there was, one disaster after another. We talk about the Speedway sinkhole, the Randolph Park facility flooded, a water flood during construction. There was a fire in the powerhouse. There was all things I didn't do, but I'm sure I got blamed for somehow. At any rate, there was a bad reputation and a lot of bad press. And anytime, it just to me, coming in on my high horse at that time that we were not financially supporting the needs of the department. And the environment is such that, I love that our board is fiscally responsible because I am too. But anytime we would ask for money, it was heavily scrutinized and you were a bad, weren't following in line if you were asking for money. And a lot of times when I wasn't the director at that time, but it seemed like we were almost second guessing. Well, what do we think the board will approve for us in a rate increase? And of course, everybody, well, I don't want to get my head up on the chopping block. So it was a low number and we just did not pay what we needed. And we've come in and have, really changed our culture and, are tremendously financially, have high financial wherewithal and practices, and everybody's engaged in budgeting and spending. And still, I'm just amazed that in 8 years, we have not had a rate increase. You show me any utility in this time frame that's done that, and there isn't one. And so I appreciate Anne Marie's recognition of that. And it's not just the department. We do a lot of stuff, but some of the financing practices, there's a lot of people that have participated in this and got us where we are. But now I just, when I just step back from my role and look at it and say, well, inflation's projected at maybe going to drop back down to the 3% range and be there. We're not even asking for the inflation amount. And so what's wrong with this? It would be simple just to say, hey, our budget is what it is, our base budget, but we're just going to track inflation. If it goes back to 10%, we're going to get a 10% increase. If it goes to 2%, we'll get a 2% increase. But we're way ahead of that. We're trying to find the exact dollars and get down low, but we still live in that culture like we're afraid to go ask for money and ask for rate increases. And my friends at Tucson Water, I'm not saying anything bad about those guys, but they go and say, hey, we want 4 years of 6% increase, and okay, but not even like an argument over there and stuff.
No argument.
So it's kind of like, it's just a different. And I don't want to make it, but just the difference in the culture. And so I'm hoping that, to me, this is a very anemic request after all this time of no rate increases. And, Marla, recently I had her do a little research on how do we stand on a national average for a sewer rate? We're way below national average. How do we stand compared to Sarita, Marana, Phoenix, all these others around here? We're lower than all of them except Phoenix. And there's obvious reasons. One, economies of scale, but two, they get to sell for big money. They're effluent that we don't get to sell because we don't own hardly any of it. So, there's stories that we could tell. And I think, I guess I'm requesting that all of us try to shift our mind. And we're, of course, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back because there's so many people that make this happen, but we run a tight ship. We do very well financially, and getting this money is the minimal to keep us in a good financial outlook. Because I hate that we could go back to the 2000 era where we weren't investing the right amount of money, and we're going to go right back. History will reinvent itself. We're going to go right back where we started. And I just hope that we move on. So sorry, but I had to say that.
No, I think that's good. And I also remember the years where a 3.5 was considered, ratio was considered on the edge. So, sorry, 1.1. Am I doing that right? 3.5? 1.5. Sorry. No, 3.5.
1.1. Which one? The debt service ratio? 1.2. 1.2 was the number.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. Asia was next, and then Matt.
Thanks, Claire. I just wanted to agree with what Anne-Marie said about the public meetings. So, I think that is important. And then I wanted to bring up, I haven't been on quite as long as some of the other folks have spoken up. I do remember a number of the things you're bringing up, though, and I do think the committee has also moved in the direction that Jackson was talking about, looking at, what does it cost to operate a wastewater utility in the public interest, right? And it might cost more than everybody can afford. And I think that that's something that would be important to bring up for the public meeting, right? There are assistance programs. So like I think the committee in the past has talked about the rates need to reflect, what it does cost to run the utility. And then there are also consideration for folks that may not be able to afford that. So I don't think we've talked about that this time around, but we have talked about that in the past. And I'm wondering if there is materials or something that would support that at the public meetings. That's what I wanted to bring up. Thanks, Claire.
Welcome. Thank you very much. And Matt, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute to the historical recollections and remind us that what has been happening over the last 10 years is we've been paying down the RWRAC debt, and that 10 years ago or so, when we raised fees 40%, they've stayed that high throughout the RWRAC period to pay that debt. And now the RWRAC debt is declining, and we're still collecting fees at that, what was then a very high level. And we were told 10 years ago that we might very well expect a rate decrease right about now because of the downward trend in the RWRAC debt service. And I mean, we've learned, I think, that the impact of inflation over the last few years has rendered that prospect, pretty much impossible. But we just can't forget that financial impact of what's been happening and why we haven't required a rate increase for the last 7 years is because we've been living on that differential between what we had been paying in high debt during RWRAC compared to the out years of when those debts are being paid off. We were told 10 years ago that, as Claire just alluded, the 1.2 debt service ratio was the minimum that we had to follow, and we did that and set a goal of 1.3, trying to keep it closer to the 1.3 than the 1.2. We were very successful, and now we've just said, well, let's ramp that up a notch and set 1.3 as our minimum. And having done that, my view of 1.3 as a minimum is that that's good enough, and that especially when we're seeing reality play out a little bit different from budgeting. Eric pointed to the 1.52 a couple years ago, and this year we're trending at ending with a 1.36. That's significantly higher than what our minimum is, and so I for one am satisfied with a 1.3. In fact, I'd be satisfied if we had a number that you could round off up to 1.3, like a 1.29, which I think we were told at a subcommittee meeting that that's where we would be without a rate increase. So I just want to remind us of some history and that we do have an obligation to ratepayers to recommend increases only when those increases are required. And I see the requirement being today anyway at 1.30. And that would leave us with the numbers that we projected in last year's financial plan.
So Matt, the recommendation from the committee, it is, I believe, is it the 3%, or there was that 1 point? Right. Debt ratio. So we have a situation where we're going to need to decide between these two options. One is to raise by 3% flat rate for the first year, and then to 1.75. And the other option, Matt, did you have more that you wanted to say? Your hand.
No,
up.
no.
Okay, if you could put your hand down so I know that if you put it up again, that'd be great. So we have that. We have the 3% and the 1.75 in the following years, or we have 1.75 the first year and continuing on through the other years. And I don't believe the subcommittee had that information or could make that recommendation to you today. So we need to evaluate that for ourselves. I think the recommendation was to have an increase, but this decision on how much is something that we need to decide today, if we can. Yes.
If I may, the subcommittee knew that it was most likely going to be at 3% in the first year.
Okay.
They didn't have the final numbers, but the recommendation from the subcommittee was for Jackson and for Matt to inform the rest of the subcommittee, the larger committee,
Okay.
that it was most likely going to need the 3%.
Thank you.
With the 1.75 in the follow-on.
Great.
years.
I wasn't
We
able
don't-
to attend, so I
you know,
wasn't sure what the
we're
outcome
planning
was.
90%, we're not at
Right.
100%, but we're close enough that we know that it's gonna be in that range.
Right. Alan, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just, I just wanted to tag on to Matt's comments, and Matt, I do remember a lot of what he was talking about. I just, talking about the 1.3 debt coverage ratio, and that was set as the limit, basically, that we wouldn't drop below that. I support that as a former utility director. I mean, I think that's the minimum. And that definitely is something that the bond rating agencies look at amongst the other stuff that Art mentioned, but that's a key. And so I would not recommend going with any rate increase that puts us even on the margin there. I would rather have that cushion, because as Jackson said, we don't know. We don't know inflation. We don't know. That could drive us right down below that, and there could be some pretty serious consequences if we do that. So my point is that if we set that as the basement, we should do everything within our power to stay above that basement.
I would make one more point, which is the county as a whole is being run very fiscally conservative right now. And there isn't a lot of resilience within the county to support the department should something happen. So I think it's an independent situation, independent financial situation. Yes.
I'd just like to add also, there was mention about the fact that it was ROMP and that we increased for ROMP. And now you're going into building another treatment plant and some serious investments. So yeah, I would say you don't want to go any lower than that because you've got $240 million for investing at least
Right.
to the next, to get that facility going.
Right. Are there additional comments, or can we, Asia, and then I would ask for a motion. Asia.
You just thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up thing. Would anybody, Matt, did you have something to say?
Yes, on on our work plan for next month, we have the presentation of this rate workbook. So I'm wondering if it's necessary to take that step this month. Wouldn't it be better to wait and see how some of these budget numbers actually settle in and look at perhaps a more finalized rate workbook next month and take the action at that time?
Unfortunately, Matt, if we do that, we are unable to make the public hearing deadlines. So that would,
What's the date of, when is the next financial subcommittee, Matt? What's the date on that?
It's the
Well, we were looking at
27th,
mid-February.
February 27th. It's scheduled for February 27th as the next.
That's the
meeting.
subcommittee,
Oh, the subcommittee.
the subcommittee.
The two best dates, hold on.
it's my understanding that's the case, but was there another question over there? Comment?
No.
Say if you want to wait till the February 27th meeting to make a decision, you do have some dates later in March that you could do.
That's true. That's true. We could put off the public hearing.
That's a thing, you can have a forum.
That's the key.
I, from my perspective, I think it's really good to look at those workbooks in detail. But I also think that I don't know how much difference it's going to make, given that we have most of the information already. That's my opinion, but not the chair's opinion. My opinion.
Just to clarify, the financial subcommittee, Asia, we're still waiting your response. But to date, the two dates with the most are February 19th and February 25th. They're tied.
And the day we have to put the public, we have to go to the paper a month.
15 days
15
prior
days.
to the
Business day.
business days.
All right,
So that's why the timing.
is pretty tight. Yeah, I would support, my thinking, I understand the interest in looking everything in detail, but I'm not sure that there would be significant changes to affect this decision. But I would ask the committee if anybody else feels differently, or I would call for a motion.
So I guess your ask is that, A, are you prepared to make that decision today, to vote today? Or if you wait till the 27th, is that sufficient time to make everything happen afterwards? And
That's a very clear way to say it. Jackson.
and I guess there's a third option is a special meeting, but.
Third option is a special meeting. Asia says, hi, Jeanette. Oh,
that's
for you.
Okay. Thank you, Asia.
Thank you. What's her response?
Yeah.
All right. So does anybody have a motion to put on the table today? And if there is no motion, then that's fait accompli that we need to wait till next month, I suppose. But okay, good. Thank you.
Going ahead and adopting the 3% rate increase in the first year, with the subsequent years being at the 1.75. The first one that Art showed today.
Right, okay. So we have a motion on the table to go for the 3% at the initial year and 1.75. And we have a second from Alan Forrest. And do we have any discussion? Well, I will add that I feel that that is the prudent financial direction. And so I am supportive of that for that reason. Anybody else have a comment for the discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Let's,
Aye.
let's. Can we count?
Yeah, we need to
I need a count.
Okay, so
Raise your hand.
in the room. Ellen, give all the people in the room.
Yeah, there's 6 in the room, yes.
Okay, and
Let's see hands on the, if you can,
we could do a roll call.
or roll
Oh,
call.
I can, let's do roll
Let's
call.
do a roll call.
Okay, Alan was a yes. Alejandra. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Asia,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Craig, Eric.
No,
Yes, sir. Kirsten.
Yeah.
Matt,
No,
Rob is not here. Scott Colt. Scott, Scott has dropped off. Okay. Scott Oldendorf
Yes.
and Steve Foley.
yes.
All right. So we have 2 against, the rest 4.
All right, the motion passes, and we'll move on to the discussion about the meetings now. Thank you, everybody, for that discussion and for all the thought and work. I want to thank Matt in particular for running these subcommittees and everybody who participated on those subcommittees to come up with so much in-depth information. I also really appreciate Art and Ellen before you and Michelle, the whole gang. So really a lot of work and very challenging to get through all of this. Eric, did you have a comment?
Just a question. Now that we've passed this motion, does the finance committee need to meet again?
Yes, I believe that there was discussion. People wanted to look at the final numbers, but it's up to Matt.
For us to help. Now, I mean, there's gonna be more information, just like you pointed out, as we move to a finer.
Yeah, I think it would be useful too. And the other thing that has to happen is, on a broader topic, we're going to be at these public meetings. And it is my understanding, we haven't had any training on this, but it's my understanding that our purpose of these public meetings is to listen and to get input. It is not to provide our own private opinions or to guide the conversation in any way. This makes it a little unsatisfying for the audience who would really like for us to comment on everything that they say, but we're not going to do that. Now, in order to have that sense of collecting information, I do think it's really helpful to be clear on exactly what we're saying and why we're saying it, so that we are all of a piece and peaceful with the decision. So that's just a little bit of my own personal guidance for public hearings. It's challenging not to react, but it's important.
Eric.
Yes, Eric.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, Claire, that we speak with one voice. The chair does the speaking. The rest of us just have big ears.
I'm not sure if the chair does the presentation. I believe
no.
that is not the case. It's the utility that does the presentation.
But you will be in control of the meeting.
Yeah, I will run.
Pima County will have a presentation between finance and wastewater for the public,
Yeah,
and then we'll open it up and see
yeah.
where they
And so
comments we
my
got.
job is to run the event, maybe. Okay, and then Anne Marie.
Just to give you some background on your public meeting, yes, as a committee, you do have to have a quorum there. You can't meet without having your quorum. And then if you look at how like the Board of Supervisors runs their meetings, they have a period of public comment. You can give people 1 minute, 3 minutes to speak, but you don't necessarily have to comment on their comments. The meeting is to take their comments down. If they ask us a specific question, we could probably answer that. The county between wastewater and finance will have a presentation, will present the proposed rate increases, the reason behind it, the cost reasons of why we're asking for this. But the committee as a whole, just as there to get the public comments, not necessarily to answer them, but just to take them in. So that
That's right.
We had their input.
Right. And that when the questions are asked, if there are technical questions that are asked, then the county personnel answers those questions. We as board members don't answer those questions unless it's maybe about our process, like how many times did you meet or something like that.
And the meeting will be a hybrid, so we won't just have who shows up.
Right.
Wherever it is geographically, there'll be people potentially online on a computer.
Yes, exactly. Anne Marie and then Art.
Yeah, in the past, we have had the public meeting and then we've closed the public meeting and had a board meeting because we're having the public meeting to get the public's input to see if it actually affects our decision. So that's what we've done in the past. I'm not saying we need to do that, but the main purpose of the public hearings is to get the public's input and then to see if that's affecting the decision that we've made up to this point. So at some point, we do need to do that. We need to reflect on what we heard from the public and then see how that is affecting our decision. So, because that's the reason we're having the public hearings, to get their feedback and seeing if, maybe we need to rethink what we decided.
Thank you. That's a good perspective. Did you do it? I'm curious, after each of the public hearings, or did you do it at the end? Anne Marie, do you remember?
In most cases, we did it at the end, but not always, especially when we had multiple public hearings. Sometimes we did it after the last public hearing, or we had the public hearings and then at our next regular committee meeting. But if we had two public hearings, we would sometimes do it at the end of the second public hearing because we want to get all the input from the public before we take a look at our decision. Okay. And
Thank you. Art, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the committee. I have a 10 o'clock meeting that I have to get walking to. So I'm going to drop, but I wanted to say thank you to the committee for your time and attention today. I also want to thank Michelle and Roy and Meredith from my team, and Jackson and his team for getting the budget in. There are a cascading number of events that needed to happen for us to be able to get you this updated projection today, and those things all align. So appreciate Michelle, Roy, Meredith, and Jackson's team for getting in the budget and updating the projections so we could have this thoughtful discussion today. I think my staff's going to stay on to go through the December forecast, but I appreciate everybody's time, and we look forward to working with you as we move through the public hearing dates. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have to end the meeting by 10. I've been informed we can't go past 10.
Well, we can. You can, but hopefully we'll finish. If we keep going,
Hopefully
we might finish by 10.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
If you
so
quit talking about it, just go.
just go. All right. So let's talk about the doodle poll results and choose our meeting dates, and then also the public meeting process. So the dates that we have on right now are the 7th and the 7th and the 12th. Are you concerned at all about having one on a Friday? That seems like a little hard.
Yeah, that was when 8, which was the majority of respondents, preferred that date. So
Just think people tend to be not clocking in on a Friday, but I don't know what.
But on the other hand,
No, yeah, good point. That's good. Yeah, or even a morning meeting. Morning meetings are not bad. A lot of older people really prefer
early meetings. The afternoon, it's nap time.
All we
Yeah,
have to have is one, but we're doing 2. And they are online, they'll be accessible by Teams.
so
you know, it's the
I
best.
just want you to know I have conflicts both those days and I will be at this meeting. So just
You're really helping us out.
dedication here.
We just picked the ones with the most likelihood to ensure we have a quorum. That's what it's all about, because we hate to go to all this trouble and then only 6 people show up and then we're like,
Right.
meeting canceled, you know,
Right.
back to the drawing board.
Okay, so let's choose some times, and places. So this, if we're going for the 7th and the 12th, that's a Friday and a Wednesday. The Wednesday will be in the evening, the Friday will be during the day. Maybe the east side on Friday and the 12th sort of central.
We were gonna recommend the Board of Supervisors hearing room for one of the meetings and this room for another one of the meetings. But, you know, we've done them at Parks and Rec, a little further north of here. We've done them way out east
Is
at
there anything on the sort of east side that we could do something at?
where was it we were that one time, Laurel? Bear Canyon Library?
Mhm.
That's way out east.
That's way east.
But, you know, any more in the age of, you know, these hybrid meetings with teams, I don't think the location is as critical as it used to be, because people, if it's not right in their neighborhood, they may not want to go drive somewhere anyway. They'll just get on the computer. Like, you know, here we got a bunch of people online right now. So
The Board of Supervisor room is a little bit iffy too, because they really don't like other groups coming in and using that room. So we have to make sure that we get the clerk's permission to use that room.
What about, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but I do think that there is a visual on where are you going for your public meetings? And especially for older people, it's hard for them to drive places. And I know it's on Zoom, but that is also hard for them. You know, some of them are not that comfortable. So, I mean, if you're going to do a daytime meeting, I think it should be like East Central, something that's middle of Tucson.
That one that's down on 22nd Street, I think it is.
That's all things in, I think permission, right? But that's all.
that's way out east also.
I mean, if you're looking.
I'm thinking of libraries also, but
Libraries are fine, and I'm sure we can get a room at just about any library that's of any size, you know, we just, you know, if you want us to find.
Can you look at
a
that?
Library, we can do that. Say, hey, let's target East Central and downtown, or East Central and north, or whatever, we can do that. And we'll use library or a county facility that is sufficient to get to. That's easy enough.
with parking.
Well, I see on Wilmot, just a little bit south of Broadway, we could check and see if they have a.
Okay. That would be great. That seems like a good spot,
It's north of.
or just north of Broadway.
Between Fifth and Broadway.
I know in north south.
One of those directions.
Yeah. It's one of those. Okay.
Well, anyway, if you could look at that, I just personally think that if we're gonna do this daytime meeting, it's the older people are gonna be there. They need to have somewhere accessible, or it needs to be parking, it needs to be a place they feel they can go. And the evening meeting is I think less critical. I think those might be, it could be here, yeah.
Okay, let's.
Or downtown.
Let's pick here for the evening one, which would be the Wednesday one.
Yeah,
And Wilmot Library, if that works out, we'll do some, but it may be another library, you know, not far from there, but they will tentatively say the Wilmot Library that is 9 o'clock in the morning.
A point of information, you talk about different generations of people. Churches in general usually have midweek things going on in the evening. So, in my recommendation, Wednesday evenings are probably a bad time.
Yeah, we're gonna do.
But we've got after work and.
We just are trying to make an accessibility by geographics and by timing. To
yeah.
do the best to allow people the opportunity, but I still feel with a hybrid online teams, that opens it up. Sure, some people are
Does.
challenged with computers, some people are, you know, challenged with driving, but it gives the maximum opportunity, and there's no way we're gonna reach everyone. And I've been to a number of these, and sometimes we have 0 public or
Yep,
1 public.
we may have nobody.
Or Jimmy would bring Amy to it, so we'd say we had 1 public, you know, I mean, bring a friend with you, you know.
So on the seventh, let's just, we've got these dates, but let's get the times. The seventh, it's a Friday, in mid-morning. Would that
I
be
was gonna
good?
say 9.
9 o'clock, is that good for people? 9 o'clock on the,
And then the Wednesday, what time? 4 in the afternoon or 5 in the afternoon?
It should be plenty of time after work and after school, so six-ish maybe. 5 or 6.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
So,
6 p.m.? I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of like 5 p.m. because people,
5 p.m.
most people can do something at 5 and by 6 they're eating dinner. To me, it's 5 is more accessible.
I'm looking for 5.
I think if people want to go 5 p.m., they're still like have brains that are doing work or like,
They still got their shoes on.
yeah, they haven't had to read us.
And they may just say, all they want's 3% and 1.75. That's nothing. I'm not even gonna go waste my time.
Exactly. Okay, so 9 a.m. and 5 o'clock p.m.
Here at the water.
7 to 12.
And this one's at the water campus, the 12th. And that should avoid that church thing too, because that would be late.
that's true, because it's early enough.
Or other commitments at night. All right, so there we go. And tell us a little bit about this process.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So Friday, March 7 at 9 o'clock,
Probably at the Wilmot Library.
Wilmot.
We're gonna try for that. And if it has to be,
Somewhere nearby.
yeah, if it
We'll
has to be
find-
somewhere nearby, it has to move to 10, 10 or 9:30, that's fine.
Do we have to vote on? Set.
We just-
I think we
can
can just set it.
Yeah.
I think so. I think we can just.
And then we had Wednesday, March 12 at 5 in the afternoon. and
Here.
that was right here.
Right here.
You know, we've been talking amongst ourselves here in the room and I don't want to leave any people online out. Does that work for everybody online as well?
Thumbs up.
Is that good?
Henry's good. Steve is good.
Matt?
Matt, are you okay?
Is that good for you, Matt? Because you're the
Okay.
chair of the finance committee. It'd be really good
Asia's
to have you
good.
there.
Eric,
Okay.
is that good? Bad?
The 12th is a little tight, but I'll work it out.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, appreciate it. So just to be clear, on timing for these. So we should arrive at least 15 minutes prior to the meeting, at least. And then we should expect the presentation to take somewhere between, I would say 15 to 20 minutes, something like that. I'm just making this up, but that seems reasonable.
Yep.
And then the whole thing would conclude within an hour.
Yeah, and
Sometimes quicker than
And
that.
if
I
nobody
just,
comes.
my past experience, I don't, but we didn't used to do hybrids, so maybe that'll change, but you typically don't get too much public participation and involvement.
Right.
People may, and I'm just saying, but maybe with the Teams meeting, it might change that because people will be online. We'll see.
Okay. And then finally,
Question.
yeah,
Can committee members attend the meeting via the Zoom? Or do they have to be present physically?
I think they can do, since we're making it a hybrid, I think we can do the same way we've been doing it to facilitate for getting the maximum quorum that we can. But we need to make sure of what the facility has to be able to do that. What's Wilmot Library? We know what we can do here. But what is Wilmot Library and how do you phone in and, how do you Teams in, just to make sure they're capable of providing that. But we'll say, yes, that will work. Teams for anybody, ourselves included.
I would strongly recommend people come in person.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
it
Committee.
shows the support and it shows everything.
Yeah, I mean, just having 3 people there from the committee is in a good showing. So
Yeah, that would be preferred, but Teams is acceptable.
Eric, you had a comment.
Where are you planning to have the meeting on the 7th?
We don't know yet, but probably Wilmot Library. Something sort of
Yeah,
central,
well,
east central.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're saying it's gonna take about an hour and the usually have a limit and people fill out a card when they come in. So they fill out, just like at the Board of Supervisors, they'll fill out a card. We'll know we'll go through those cards.
They don't fill out a card.
Well, maybe they
But
send a
they will be
chat.
identified by their name, or they have to recognize themselves.
And you're gonna have a bunch of numbers. Who's that? What's the phone number? We'll figure it out.
Well, yeah, you'll figure that out. So, and then there should be a limit on the time of speaking, and we might want to say that could be,
2
minutes.
3 minutes is what the board uses.
3 years is kind of typical.
Oh, 3? Okay. All right. If there are tons and tons of people, like the board does, take it down to 2 if there's so many
It's a lot.
people. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about this because when I go to the Board of Supervisors meetings, as all of you have probably seen, there are, like 45 minutes of ranting and angry and really disrespectful conversation. And I am not convinced that some of those people won't show up to do this. It could be. You're not worried about it. Okay, good to know.
Well, we can publish kind of rules about how the public commenting period will be conducted with the time limit, and you must identify yourself, and we can specify on there, comments must be related to agenda items. They must be respectful, blah, blah, blah. We can
I
clarify
think
that.
that would be very good. Yes.
I think we can, yes.
Yeah.
And also just meetings in general, there's usually maybe a sergeant at arms or,
That's a good
somebody should we have one law enforcement there just in case?
It's gonna break
Joe.
I don't.
There we go, Jim will do. Yeah, I don't think that is necessary. Yeah.
But I do think we should be aware that these things are happening more now than they were 10 years ago. And if that's the case, we are just non-reactive.
Right.
Do not.
Do not react. That is kind of the big thing.
Okay,
And we have time to report on this some more on February's meeting. We'll give a lot more detail.
Right.
okay. Perfect. We're gonna move on unless,
Comment or a question about that is, it might be too early for you, but I was wondering if at that February meeting, you could maybe give us a preview of what the presentation.
We will try to have the
Just say
presentation.
we're coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
thank
Good
you.
recommendation.
That's a great,
That is a very good point.
okay, yes, Marla.
The other thing about the public meeting is because it is, a formal public meeting, we can request everybody address you as Madam Chair. And I think
I really like Chair Claire. Yeah. All right.
Better than hey you.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair Claire? Okay, we'll just.
So we have several items remaining on the
Yeah.
agenda.
We do,
Several.
we do.
Move on.
But let's move on. So, the financial subcommittee report. Matt, did you have anything additional to report? I think you kind of did that. You're good?
We're good.
No.
Okay, Asia,
Isai.
Isai, sorry, I missed you. The period 6 expense and revenue summary.
Isai, you still here?
Hello, everyone. I'm still here, yes. Thank y'all. I'll share my
Stop
screen here and
Oh, hold on. Let me stop sharing. Sorry.
yeah, I'll wait for you to stop sharing and
There you
I'll
go.
share my screen. Thank you. Quick second. Thanks, everyone. So these are data regarding period 6, ended in December 31st. Our total O&M actuals 46.7 million. We're projecting 103.2, giving us a variance of 1.5 to the good. Majority of this savings is coming from the personal services. We have a vacancy savings of 2.2. That's what we're projecting. So that's helping us out with the capital equipment that we have overspent from prior year that came in this year. So that's helping us a lot. Total O&M expenses including contra, depreciation, debt services, Our actuals are 77.8 million. Our projection 180.6. Still giving us up 2.7 to the good. We scroll down to our revenue. Our actuals right now are 90.6, and we're projected to be at 99.9, giving us roughly slightly under a million for that. Our talking about the rating ratio, the budget is 1.32, and we're projected to be at 1.36. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. That's great. Any
you.
any questions from anybody else?
Matt's hand is up.
Oh, Matt, sorry,
Matt.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Isai, I have a recollection. I've asked this question before, but I am not remembering the answer. The total revenues showing almost 200 million. The total expenses showing just over 180 million.
Correct.
That $20 million differential, it's not accounted for in the budget process anywhere, I guess. Does that just go into our cash surplus, or what
Correct.
happens to that?
That goes into your cash.
But
But
let me
we want to
interject there. It does go to the cash reserve, but one of those
Yes,
is
but-
capital contributions. It's just a
Exactly.
value. It's not a dollar bill. It's infrastructure that they give us. When a developer builds something and they say, here you go, Pima County. So that has a
Exactly.
value, but that's not cash going into the reserve.
Yeah, that's a caveat.
And that's a pretty big number.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Done.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the CIP subcommittee. Asia, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you. I mentioned, I think that the committee did endorse generally that the plan as it was presented in December. And it seems like this committee will be making all of those considerations towards the rate increases and financial plans. So I don't think there's anything else we need to do there, but Jeanette, please let me know if we do. And then we would otherwise be intending to meet in this summer. Does that sound right? Okay, thank you.
Good, okay. Thank you very much. Citizen Water Advisory Committee, Helen.
Yeah, just real quickly, there was one kind of big announcement that Tucson Water made a couple of weeks ago. And that was that they received grant funding from Bureau of Reclamation. It's an amount of $86.7 million, and it's to construct a demonstration advanced water purification plant that's basically direct potable reuse. And I think they're going to locate it at Tres Rios is the plan that they floated. So they signed the agreement with Bureau of RWRAC, so that's all done. And in exchange, Tucson Water has agreed to leave a total of 26,000 acre feet of CAP water in the system in Lake Mead in exchange, because the plant is basically going to be a 2.5 million gallon per day plant. So over 10 years, that's about, 25, or I think it comes to that 26,000 acre feet. So that's kind of the trade-off, is that they'll replace CAP water with reuse water. So yeah, and they're projecting that would be online in 2031. The nuance with the 26,000 over 10 years is it doesn't have to be, the same amount each year. It kind of depends on when the plant gets online and when they can actually make those exchanges. So that whole amount might even come in the last few years of that 10 years. It just has to be done during the 10 period. Or if for some reason construction gets pushed out beyond that, then they'll extend that payback period as well. So, yeah, big news.
That is big news.
Could you just say one more time, please? You said 36.7 million grant, Tucson Water for what over at Tres Rios?
An advanced water purification plant. So it's basically to build a plant of 2.5 million gallons per day capacity that will convert wastewater to drinking water.
Scott, it was 86.7.
Yeah, it's 86.7 million for the plant.
And we should go on.
2030.
2031 is the,
And are there ramifications to the discharges to the river and the effects on the environment?
yeah, they've taken all that into consideration, but you know better what's going from Tres Rios into the, because this would just take 2.5 MGD.
And Tres Rios runs at 30 MGD or
Yeah.
a little more,
Yeah.
and you're taking 2 million of that won't go in the river, because right now, everything at Tres Rios goes in the river.
Actually, I think, Claire, just to clarify a little more, is that we have the in-channel program in that section of the channel from basically Tres Rios to Trico Road. More than 2.5 MGD on average probably flows past that Trico Road. So we lose that anyway. So really what this is just trying to capture what we've been losing.
Okay.
So it shouldn't have really any real impact to that project.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. And we had a question from Steve Foley.
Steve,
Hey,
you're
Steve.
muted. You're muted.
Muted. You're muted. He's trying to.
He's trying to unmute. He's studying his
Do you
key.
know sign language, Steve?
I can't unmute him.
We understand. We understand.
This is
You're welcome to write in the chat. If you can open your chat, you can write, if you have the question and you want to type it in there, we can see it. But if you're unable to unmute, that's the only other option. And if not, you'll have to remember it for next month.
see why we need a public hearing where people can drive to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're just gonna move on unless you want to type it in. the chat.
If he gets something in chat, we'll respond. But
Yep.
All right.
Keep our eyes open.
So,
Future.
well, thank you very much. Any other people want to comment? Okay, future agenda items. We have the presentation that you'll do at the public hearing
Mhm.
next week. Anything else that people want to add? No? Okay, moving on. Call to the audience. Any of you left? None of you were here to begin with, but. All right, we'll.
Call to the audience. I'm sorry. I thought Anne Marie was trying to say something, but, the call to the audience, sorry, I didn't do it at the beginning, but I did want to introduce Steve Ritchie over here to my right. He's in the room. Steve, if you say something, the camera might go your way. Say hello.
Wave your hand.
At any rate, Steve Ritchie was previously our manager, our plant manager over at the Tres Rios treatment facility. He was the selected candidate to be our new deputy director of the conveyance division, so an internal promotion. Steve, refresh my memory. How many years have you been with us? He's been with us since 2005, done a great job. I'm happy that he's getting this opportunity to promote and iterate. We'll maybe have a little, people already started to leave because of the length of this meeting, but I'll do this again next month and I will do it at the beginning as opposed to the end. So.
Excellent. Well, welcome.
Also, one more announcement too is Marla Berry, who's on my left here that you all are familiar with as she participates in these meetings all the time. She handed me a piece of paper recently that is her swan song. She'll be retiring in early March, I think March 7th. And so you will see her one more meeting unless she calls in sick, which she better not. And iterate, we'll bring that up.
You'll fire.
Next month's meeting, we'll bring it up. That's my announcement.
Notice that's the date of the first time.
That's funny. Oh, congratulations, Marla. That's exciting.
Very good.
Okay, any other calls to the audience, things from Jackson?
No, those are my two, but you got Matt and Steve's hand.
Steve's hand is still up.
Okay.
All right.
I got my technical difficulties straightened out. On the grant the city got to treat the wastewater, I was just curious if wastewater was involved with the city of Tucson in the grant application, whether that had been discussed and coordinated before the grant application was made.
The wastewater department for the county is working with Tucson Water on their advanced water purification, direct potable reuse, but there's lots of details to work out. So that grant funding, I'm sure, will help be used for some of the things that wastewater may need to contribute to help make that a successful project. But I don't want to speak for the Tucson Water, but of course, to get everybody aligned and together, it's going to involve money on both parts. So that's all.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just wondering why it was Tucson Water doing that project rather than the county, since we're the ones treating the water in the first place.
Yeah, so the water this is to send to people for drinking water, and the county is not a drinking water entity, so Tucson Water is. And the way that the new rules came out of the state Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, they basically look at wastewater or sewage, and all through the treatment process, what wastewater does, what the water company does, what whoever's serving the water does, and that advanced water purification, all those steps have to be taken collectively to achieve the final quality of water. And so, you can't just take sewage and give it to the city and say, here, they're not a wastewater treatment facility, but the things that we do and additional things we may do to participate with them require both entities, both utilities, to be able to make advanced water purification final product.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, another reason why it's Tucson Water is because this is Bureau of Reclamation grant money. And the Bureau right now, their focus is the health of the Colorado River. And so this is a place where they can spend money to help a Colorado water user, Colorado River water user, to reduce their reliance on Colorado River water, by funding this project. So that's also the tie why it has to be Tucson Water.
Great, thank you.
And Matt, you had a comment or question.
Yeah, to Jackson's announcement about Steve, I just wondered if I missed another retirement announcement, or whose place is Steve taking?
It was Eric Wiedewelt, retired a few months back after many years, 25 plus years with the county. He was going to go be grandpa duty, and a well-deserved retirement. He's been a great part of our team, but he did retire not too long ago, Matt.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So we're moving on to the very last thing, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Scott, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded in here. And then we have any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye.
Sorry it went so long, but good discussion, important discussion.
Yeah, very good to meet you guys.
Steve,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
We're
Bye.
allowed to vote on
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, they're never.
Just for me?
Just for you, dear.
Steve, sorry I didn't do it at the beginning when everybody was here, but now you got to come next month. to make
You
sure.
almost forgot to get